Okay, let me make sure that's recording. It is. Okay, so now we've got our 4 additional components and we've got our main component here. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to go ahead and put in some additional components. We are going to be putting in our very first one of the single links. Sorry, I'm looking at the book. We're going to be putting in a single link, okay? So to do this, we're going to go back up here to the Insert Component button. We're going to click that. It's going to open up our prompt, and we're going to go to Single Link. Now, remember, I did have to navigate to this folder. I forgot to say that before. I did have to actually, go to this folder. It's not going to automatically open up into the folder that you want the very first time. Now, every subsequent time after that, it will open up into the folder that you want it there, or that you were already in. But the first time, you're going to have to navigate to the specific folder you want. So I'm going to click on the single link. I'm going to hit open. And this time I am going to click out here in space. So I'm just going to go click. Now you see when I did that one click, it is still floating. You can see here it's not fully fixed. But it also exited the tool. It didn't drop a whole bunch of them. Okay? So, one thing that I forgot to do. So we're going to go back slightly. This is page 10-17. We're going to modify the color of one of these because you can see as we get more and more of these components out here in space, if I had them kind of spaced out more with how much I've been jumping around, it's going to be hard to tell which one is the fixed component. Now I can click on here and it'll highlight it, but it's also easier just to change that color. So I'm going to move these up here. I'm going to click on this component right here. I'm going to go over to the right-hand side of my screen. You can see we've got a whole bunch of tabs over here on the right-hand side of my screen. I'm going to go to the third tab up, which is the Appearance, Scene, and Decals. I'm going to drop down the Appearance by clicking the caret on the left-hand side of that. And I'm just going to go to Painted. I'm going to drop down next to Painted. We're going to go Car Paint. Car Paint is cool and it's pretty. So let's go down. I'm going to make mine metallic gold. So just identify a color. You can go through any of these that you want to pick any color that you want, but I'm just going to pick metallic gold. I'm going to click and I'm going to drag it over in my workspace and hover over the component that I want to change the color on. When I let go, you can see it's going to bring up a prompt window or a quick prompt toolbar. It's going to give me a bunch of different options. So I can go to Face Extrude, which is just that face that I dropped it on. Go here, Extrude 1. Which was the original extrude that we did to create the part. I can go here with the body, and notice this is changing them for all of them. This is actually affecting the part itself. Now if I go over one more, you can see that it's going to do all of the double link components, and if I go over one more, it's going to choose just the double link number 1, was just that first double link that we did. So that's the one that we need to choose. So if I'm going to click on that, now I can see that that's a different color, which is going to identify that particular component as a slightly separate component than the other one. So it's going to help me remember that that is my fixed component that we're working with. Okay? All right. So next up, let's go ahead and start building our chain. Okay? So I'm actually going to start building our chain the opposite direction of the book. The book's got us building our chain once in the back direction and then once kind of back that way. You can't. That doesn't make any sense. To the left, when you're looking at your screen, and then continue on to the right. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and start building our chain off to the right. So we have our single component here, and this is where it gets down to mating. Now, I did also forget to mention that navigation in our 3D space identical to navigation in our part space in our part files. So we can zoom in, zoom out. Center mouse button is what rotates and pans. And then Control Shift and I'll do all the same things that they did in the other one. Generally speaking, I just use my center mouse button. That's just kind of how I've learned and what I do. So that was a weird click. I don't know what it was. Anyway, so what we're going to do is we're going to start mating these together. Now, mating, again, is the same as our relationships in our 2D sketches. So what we need to do is we need to figure out a way to tell this component, who's out here in the middle of space, where to go compared to this component that is over here, not hanging out in the middle of space. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to mate it, we're going to tell it kind of spatially this direction where we want it. So to do that, you kind of have to understand how these things go together. When you're putting mates into an assembly, you want to stick with mates that can physically be done. Mates that they kind of make sense based on how the components all go together. So for this, we're going to be mating this to this bore right here. Okay? So in order to mate, we've got three different ways actually to access the mating toolbar. The first way is up here in our assembly ribbon. We've got the mate button right here. You can click on that and that'll access the mate tools. The second way is with our S key. Now remember, if from our sketches, the S key will open up a quick toolbar that gives you access to most of the predominantly used tools in a specific environment. If you remember back to our parts, that changes versus from like our 3D model space, which gave you things like boss extrude, cut extrude, revolve, sweep, all of those. And in our sketches, it gave you line, circle, square, all of those. So in this one, it's going to give you a different set of tools yet again. It's going to give us the insert component tool, which is what you click on to drop new components in. Then it's going to give you the mate tool. So that's the second way to get to the mate tool. The third way to get to the mate tool is to click on a face itself. So after I click on that face, you can see up here, here's our quick toolbar that we get. And over here on the right-hand side is a mate shortcut. Generally speaking, I will use the S key. That's just, in general, what I do. Even if I've clicked on a face, I'll still generally come up here, hit the S key, and be able to hit the mate tool. Okay, so let's go ahead and access our mate tool. Now, you don't necessarily have to have one selected before you do. I typically do, again, just because having a surface mated before you access the tool generally gives you a little bit more leeway as far as accidents. It's easier to go back and pick the right surface if you're not in the mate tool, because if I click on that surface and then click on another one, it's just kind of a big old pain in the butt. So now that we're in the mate tool, we can go ahead and start selecting surfaces that we want to place this mate on. So again, I'm going to mate this bore here with this bore here. And to do that, I'm just going to click on those surfaces. I'm going to click on the bore on this one. Then I'm going to zoom in here. And remember, guys, there is absolutely nothing wrong with zooming in to be able to get a better view. I see a lot of students who try to click from way out here. They're trying to select that little face in there, and it just doesn't work. And just zoom in. It's not a big deal just to zoom in. It's easier and takes less time to zoom in and click on a surface than it does to try to do like little finite movements with your mouse to get to that movement or to get to that surface. So I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to click on that surface. And you see this guy moved. So now when I clicked on that surface, it has lined up. You can see on the left-hand side here are our tools. It's lined up coincidentally those two circular or cylindrical faces. Over here on the left-hand side, we can see our toolbars for the mates. We've got coincident, which can't be used for this particular thing, but these are all very similar to our mates or to our relationships in our sketches. Coincident, parallel, perpendicular, tangent, we've got concentric. Then we do have distances, so we can click a distance here and tell it we want it offset in a certain distance. We also have the ability to swap back and forth. So if one of them was aligned backwards, we can go to mate alignment, click the other one, see how one is highlighted. If you click the other one, it'll flip the component around. Okay? I don't want it flipped around. I want it looking like that. So now with that all done, we can hit our green check mark. And let's go ahead and exit that tool. As you can see now, those have an actual relationship. So I can still move it around because it's not fully constrained, right? But it also does have a relationship. I can move it around within reason because those are now coincident cylindrical faces. All right? Okay, so I'm going to move this out that way. Now that we've got those cylindrical faces mated, I'm going to... I think I skipped ahead too far in the book. Yep. Okay. So now we're going to use a mate called... that is in the Advanced Mates tool. So if we click on our mate button again, we're going to access our mate tools and see we've got standard mates up here. This is the very top one. Right underneath that is advanced mates. Now, advanced mates are just mates that are, it's not that they're super hard to use or for advanced users. They're just more intricate than the simplistic tools that we use as far as like just, plane on plane or circle on circle. So if I click on that advanced mates, you can see it gives us even more. We've got profile center. We're not worried about that right now. We've got symmetrical. We've got width, path, linear couple. Then we've got some distance mates, but these are variable distance mates. So we give it like a top and a bottom end, and stuff can bounce in between those. So I'm going to select the width mate, and we've got to pick two different things. We've got the width selection and the tab selection. So the width selection, the first one that we're going to select is we're going to select here, and oh no, not like that. Sorry, sometimes the zoom and the movement gets messed up. So I'm going to click here, and then I'm going to click right here. Okay, so the tab or the width mates are what your tab has to sit between. This is a tab. This is our width. So I'm going to click there, and I'm going to click right here. You can see that it's filled in our width selection, and our highlight went down to the tab selection. So now I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and I'm going to select our tab sides. So that's going to be here and here. That's both sides of the tab. Now what this mate does is it takes, dang it, stop zooming out like that, is it takes our tab, which is our second selection, that's going to be our single link, and it places it exactly in the middle of our width selection, okay? So now it's kind of like symmetrical on like a 3D basis or on like an assembly basis. So I'm going to hit my green check mark. I'm going to exit that. And now you can see that we've got, it's sitting in between there. Now we only have rotational movement in the up and down way. I can't move it outside there, okay? And it is locked both within this cylinder and within these two tabs here. And that's how we're going to place each one of the single links. So once you get that done, we're going to go ahead and end this video and move on to the next one.